It's Gary again. I've just been watching an old documentary, 2 years old, about Morgellons disease, and I had to stop it after some of these people go in and see a doctor with fibres, physical fibres under their skin, and these doctors still deny it. Well, when I got infected, I knew it was from my worm bin. I knew it was bacteria, but I didn't know what type of bacteria it was. I only knew that penicillin-resistant E. coli was in there. But looking through all their legislation, these things get penicillin and they pass all their information on to the others. Now, let's forget that, because what I want to talk about is one particular one called a spirochete. Now, it causes leptospirosis, Lyme's disease, and syphilis. Because there are three main types of these, but these have been divided down into another 33 different categories. All various names, like denticoli living in your mouth. That's the good bacteria of these spirochetes. These have given it a name called denticoli because it lives in your dental, in your mouth. Well, after these have had penicillin, they then go on to cause Lyme disease, which in turn to dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Yeah, I've discovered this from all their literature since I've been infected. I had one that I could not identify. Now, I had a hair. It was just looked like a hair. This is because that's what I thought it was then. Well, this hair was moving, twitching. No static electricity near it, no wind near it, but it was twitching. So I had to try and find out what this was, because it was the only one I couldn't identify. I identified all the other 8 parasites, and this one was eluding me. Now, it took me over a week of researching thousands and thousands of pictures of this thing, and I eventually found one. Now, it was back in 1700s it was, 1742 or 1770, I can't remember. The guy's name was called Lopez. He was in Spain, and he had a hand drawing of one of these things, and it was a spirochete. Its final adult stage is a spirochete. Now, what they do is whatever host they're in, they'll go down to where they get keratin. They'll eat the backs of your fingernails, because I've got grooves all the way down my nails. Every month, there's one groove. So every few millimeters on my nail, there's a groove. Some grooves are bigger than others, depending on how many of these things are in my body. Now, the very first month I got these, I had thousands and thousands come out of my ankles in the shower. Now, they're virtually transparent. You can hardly see them. But the magnification of the water magnified, so you can see them swimming around. I wish I didn't video it, because I was in awe of it. I was in the shower for 7 hours in one day because I could feel them. You get a headache first. That's them waking up and moving, and then you'll feel them going down your spinal column in the spinal fluid, and you can actually hear the rush of the water or the air, whatever it is making the noise. Now, these are spirochetes. Now, these have been removed by our history because they cause every disease known to mankind. Why do we know nothing about them? Because someone in their ultimate wisdom 100 to 200 years ago discovered this, Mr. Alzheimer's, who was looking into dementia, and put his names to it, to Alzheimer's. Why would you call dementia Alzheimer's? To give people medication for a new disease. It's the same. All of these diseases lead back to Lyme disease. Borrelia burgdorferi is the main culprit of causing most of these things. Now, these fibres, they need the keratin to turn into that hair. If you check it, there's animals all over the world that get these, and they get sores around by their hooves. Now, theirs is all in the literature, but these ones on the humans has been erased. Now, back in the late 1800s or 1700s, 4 doctors used to go into the working class community looking for people who were seeing hairs on the backs of their hands. Now, I've only found this information once, and I went back to find it again, and I couldn't find it. Same with Mr. Lopez and his spirochete in the late 1700s. Now, why have they removed this from history? It's because these doctors get kickbacks from these pharmaceutical medical. So as soon as you mention you've got hairs, you get labelled with psychosis. That's what it is. These have made psychosis up. It's a man-made disease, just like Morgellons is a man-made disease. It's a biological weapon back from the Gulf War. That's what I think it was. I came back from the Gulf and I had very similar symptoms of this. It took a couple of years to really get into me, and I just have constant joint pain. Now, I had nothing for years. It just aches. In winter, it aches more than in summer. I never saw any fibres under my skin. Never noticed them. Wasn't looking. I didn't notice if I had slurred speech because I was always drunk after work. But when I got this infection, watching the symptoms, all these symptoms just kept coming on. So I'd look into the symptoms. The very first one was that really scared me was a feeling of being drunk, or feeling on a real rough ferry crossing. Now that happened for 5.5 hours. I had a headache first, and then you start wobbling, and you have to keep your feet far apart, or you're going to go over and smack your head and knock yourself out, which is dementia. Is it not? Or I don't know. I've had my right arm shaking like a good one for 20 minutes. I couldn't hold a cop. I couldn't do nothing with it because I poked my eye. Look the size of my fingernails. I've got 2 thumbs that are so sore I can't use a set of nail clippers. I've got to wait for a pair of plier ones to come so I can hopefully trim them with them. I've been biting them off. If you lot think I'm a girl and I don't. I like a long nail to pick my nose. Don't we all? Don't we all not like to pick our nose? Oh, I'm going off the track now. I do apologise. But watching this Morgellons show and watching these people with these symptoms, and it's physical evidence. I have physical evidence. I went to a hospital with a test tube with 9 parasites in it. 9 of them that all come out of my body. Now, some of these are big enough to see with the human eye. And I had a doctor tell me, you can't see bacteria with the human eye. Well, I'm sorry. You can. One's a centimetre long. If you can't see that with the human eye, you better go and get an optician's test, you know. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is Morgellons, without a shadow of doubt, because of all the fibres that are coming out. Well, these aren't fibres at the moment. These are adult spirochetes in their final stage of life, and all they are is looking for a new host. Trust me, I watch these things crawl up my dogs, because yes, I managed to pass this on to my dogs because of infectious diseases clinic gave me some dermal 500 cream. Now, this is supposed to have paraffin in it, which makes it flammable. Well, I'm an ex-fireman, and I smoke, so I had to try that for myself. I put a 3000 degrees blowtorch on this thing, and it just turned to liquid. It did not ignite. You could use it as a fire extinguisher. So that's telling me they deliberately gave me that to spread it all over my body, because at the time I went to them, I just had 4 little holes opened up, and I asked 2 of the hospitals to cut them out. Their response was, oh, we don't do that. Why not? They're flesh-eating bacteria, every single one of them, because all they do for the worms is chew organic matter up for them so the worms can eat it, because the worms can't eat nothing without these bacteria. Any worm farmer will tell you that. But why is there no legislation telling you how bad these worms are? God, UK governments try to get people to do worm farming a few years back. Well, they must have known about these things, because you're not telling me biologists don't know where these bacteria come from. It took me 6 months to work this all out. And I haven't got a degree, but I've got a little bit of biology, a little bit. I love science and that. I'm an ex-fireman. I did 12 years in the army. Cool. I've worked for Rent-A-Kill. I've worked at the council. Now, these are sort of jobs that I needed to know about these little things, but it's not there. All we get told is you get leptospirosis from rat urine. Yeah, you do. That's because these that's because these little buggers are living in the rat's urine. It's not the rat. It's Borrelia burgdorferi. That's the one that causes Lyme disease, yeah? But if you trace leptospirosis back, it goes back to Lyme disease. They all do. Every single one. Now, why is Lyme disease such a horrible subject to talk about? Because the medical doesn't really want to look into it or do anything about it, because it will expose their dirty little secret. Yeah, why would you remove the adult version of these spirochetes? Trust me, if you research back, if you get infected with these, you'll do so much research to find it. Someone who's not infected will give up because it's been buried so deep, it is unbelievable. I can't research anything because my internet is being manipulated, and all my friends have all been told that I suffer from psychosis, and they are putting it down to my military vaccinations before I went out to the Gulf, which is a load of codswallop. Because if that's the case, all 1.2 million troops would be suffering with the same condition, would they not? Because every single troop had all the vaccinations. It's just a set that who's come into contact with certain stuff. Now, I think it was the 120mm shells we bought off the Americans. I can't prove that, not without having one of these shells in front of me and a biologist. But some of those shells will still be somewhere in storage because they last forever, just like the bacteria last forever. Yeah, they die, they have a short life, but these things are constantly multiplying, constantly. And they're constantly multiplying in your body. And you have doctors telling you it's all in your head. Well, they are. They live in your brain. These things settle and live in your brain. That's why you're getting all these cognitive and neurological effects, because they're living in there. You can't have nothing in your brain without you feeling it. But yeah, anyway, watching how sad, I'm quite ready to come out and say I've got Morgellons, because it is, there are too many people looking into it now for it not to be discovered. But the doctors are persistently calling you mad. So as soon as you mentioned it, I mentioned one word, spirochete, and the doctors changed their tone and sent me home to treat myself. I knew something was up with that word, and that's when I come home and I researched and researched, but there is nothing about these things. It has been wiped from history. And yet you go on the Morgellon site and you can see lots of these hairs dancing around. Well, it's not a hair, it's a spirochete in its final stage of life looking for a new host. Now, if you put it under a microscope, you'll see its flagella. They call them flagella. Well, this thing's so big, it is now legs. It is now an insect. It is no longer a bacteria because of the size of it. Yeah, I can't research nothing. I can't ask no one to research it for me because everyone thinks I'm mad. And seeing parasites, well, I have a test tube full of them. In fact, their penicillin made them join together. Now I have spirochetes and a mold bacteria working together. I coughed something up the other day, and it's still under the microscope now because I'm watching it. I'm watching it grow its threads every day. It's growing new fibres. And that's what it's doing under your skin, because their penicillin is the nasty agent that makes these things do and cause nasty things to humans. I can't prove it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, so no one's going to believe me. Well, so it doesn't matter whether I'm in Morgellons bracket or not, because people think I'm mad anyway. I've got one person who's seen these things coming out in my hand, and he couldn't jump back quick enough. And they've got some posh bloke trying to talk to him to convince him that they're not. It's not in their medical books, so they can't treat you. So they'd rather label you with madness. Well, that's what they've been doing for 100 to 200 years to the working class. Anyone who sees hairs come out the back, the saying, see hairs in the palm of your hand, you're going mad? Well, that's where it comes from. 4 doctors used to go into the working class community here in the UK back in the 1700s and look for people who were seeing hairs coming out the backs of their hands, and they would label them with psychosis. That's where the word psychosis comes from. I researched it once, I haven't been able to find it again, so if anyone else wants to look it up, be my guest. It's a man-made condition, psychosis, thought up by these doctors to keep you in the dark about it as it's been forgotten by history, because anyone who thought about it back then was locked up permanently and force-fed psychotic drugs to make you forget. I got sectioned, and how did they do it? After I saw the doctor and he said, do you want to see a shrink? I went home fuming, mad as hell, and a couple of days later an ambulance crew come round and asking me all these questions, and what they really wanted me to say was that I couldn't cope. Well, I did. I told them that I couldn't cope for 6 hours while both my hands were infected and fat. And my dogs had diarrhoea because we were all suffering. We all had diarrhoea. And I couldn't clean it up. And I said, I can't cope for 6 hours in the evening because my hands and swelled up. They gave me a bottle of water, a blanket, and disappeared. That was their help, a bottle of water and a blanket from the paramedics. And I had 2 infected hands. They were just starting to swell up. And I said, well, come back in a couple of hours and you'll see how fat they are. And me not being able to cope. And you can't even bend your fingers. I'd be pacing up and down for 7 hours at night. God knows what the neighbours must think. And anyway, after they disappeared, the next day I got a knock on the door. And it was 2 police officers waving a finger, a section order for me. And I wasn't going to go quietly. And then I thought, well, no, I better add because of what it implied. You know, you don't want to be a psychosis sufferer, do you? So I went quietly. I got taken up there and I got put in like a cell, like a police cell, basically. And I was fast asleep in the shower. I pulled the mattress into the shower bit so I could be out of the light to get some sleep. Next minute, the cold shower, when I'm fast asleep, the cold shower comes on, wakes me up. Next minute, they're dropping the temperature right down and right up. So you're sweating 1 minute and then you're freezing cold the next. And they did that for 24 hours. And that's human torture. No one deserves to go through that sort of crap. Anyway, in the morning, the guys from upstairs, the nut ward, came down and picked me up. And they were so refreshing. They gave me my phone back. Treated like a human being after 24 hours of being treated like an animal. They turned me into an animal. If I was ready to go to the toilet, I'd have wiped excrement up the wall. That's how they made me feel for 24 hours. And anyway, got back upstairs. Next minute, you're getting the psychotic drugs pushing, because they gave me a drugs test, but they didn't tell me the result of it till I left. I'll tell you about that a bit later. They gave me these drugs and I was like a mong for the first 24 hours. You know, just standing there drooling because you forget. You sat on your bed and you want to go toilet. Before your arse has got off the bed, you've forgotten it. So you're dribbling because you're rushing to the toilet because you've forgotten that many times. And by the time you do remember, you're that bursting, you'll wet yourself, you know. Anyway, after 2 days of being on these meds, I had to say something because I just didn't know who I was or where I was. And they turned around and said, you refuse any medication, you'll be kept in here permanently. So I thought, oh, right, okay. So I shut my mouth and but they reduced them. They actually reduced them for me. And anyway, after that, and then after a few days, these staff were saying to me, what the fuck are you doing in here, Gary? We can clearly see you're not mental. I said, I know. I said, I can see a couple of mental people in here, but they're the ones that they force feed or injection to and keep them subdued, because they don't want them talking to the other people. As soon as they see you talking to them, they come and intervene you're just conversation. All these people want to do is get their point across that they've been trying to get to point ever since they get locked up in this place. Anyway, 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, they decided to let me out. And I was actually complaining about some of the symptoms I was having in there. And they think it's all in your head, so they're just in one ear, out the rubber, straight away, you know. Oh, he's crazy. You don't listen to what he says, and that's what they do. They go around and convince all your friends and family around you of the same very thing. Now, one of these has done it to a friend of mine and told them that it's from my vaccinations from the golf. Well, if that's the case, I can now sue them because they're admitting that they've caused this in me, which I bet they wouldn't in court, clearly, but I need to go and get the statement off this guy who said that. Gosh, it's a bit longer than I thought, but then I've got a lot to say and a lot to get off my chest. I'm dying. We're all dying. Everyone's dying. The moment you come out, you're dying, aren't you? Because that's just what life is, you know. Everyone knows we're not on the planet forever. Anyway, yeah. As I got near the end of the term, I was due for a review, and I had someone come up from Advocate Service, and they put an appeal in for me. I'm still waiting to hear about that appeal. I don't think I'll ever hear about it, because now I'm sectioned. The police can come and arrest. They don't need an excuse. They don't even need a warrant to come and pick me up now, because I suffer from psychosis, which is that's what being sectioned entails. You have no rights anymore. They can come and lift you whenever they want. And can I get a solicitor? No, because who's ever manipulating my internet gave me a false solicitor about 3 weeks ago. Googled the solicitors, rang them up, had a nice conversation with the secretary, told her my whole story, blah, blah, blah. I will give this to the, oh God, what do they call them? Mind blank, something's going on, because my mind's going blank. Partners, they'll put that forward to the partners and someone will ring me the following week. Well, no one bothered to ring me back the following week, so I waited another week and rang them. Well, funny thing, their phone number had been disconnected. And I thought a bit suspicious, so I tried the house phone. Well, when I was speaking to them, there was like electrical interference on my mobile, so I put that down and tried the house phone. The same interference was there, and I just didn't compute. And anyway, I was ringing them back to try and get the information, and there wasn't. It had been disconnected. I went to borrow the phone. We couldn't even find the solicitors online. Didn't exist. Now, well, they're going such an effort to stop me getting a solicitor, because as soon as they know that they turn me away with a raging infection, and I mean a raging infection. If they turn one of your kids away with a fat hand, what would you do? I'd have gone, well, if it was one of my kids, I'd have gone ballistic. I wouldn't have left the hospital unless they treated them. But you're just in shock and awe of them sending you home. But they did it because I mentioned one word, a spirochete. Now, I'd never heard of them. I've been in 3 jobs that I've needed to know about these. I've been a fireman, I've worked for the council, and I've worked for Rent-A-Kill. Now, these are the jobs that you need to know about these things because of the nasty diseases they cause and carry. So, what I found out about it is, it just disgusts me. How these lot have all got together 100 to 200 years ago, decided to wipe this from history and label people with psychosis. God knows how many thousands or even a million, it could be 1 million people by now they've locked up with psychosis. This year it's 52,000 people I think they've locked up. But they don't all have to declare their figures. The private hospitals don't have to put their figures in. So this must be at least 100,000 people a year they lock up with psychosis. It must be. I think I'm getting a bit, not knowing what to say. Well, I've had loads in my head to say, but it's, I've got thousands and thousands of videos on my phone of every time they did something new, I videoed it. But can I get these doctors to look at it and show them? Can I, Al? I told them that these are all penicillin-resistant bacteria, and they still gave me more penicillin. And then they told me I was washing my hands too much. Who gives someone to penicillin when they're washing their hands too much? 2 lots. 2 lots. Now, I come home and checked. Now, there's a list of 5 or 6 penicillins not to be given to someone who has a penicillin-resistant bacterial infection. That's what I have. Every single one of these has penicillin in them because they would not have survived in the worm bin if they didn't. These bacteria use penicillin as an advantage against other bacteria that doesn't. It keeps them off their food. When it was in my body, I had 4 holes. Now, they're all being pinned in by my good bacteria. We all know we have good bacteria. You have these in your mouth as good bacteria. When they get out of control, it becomes gingivitis and you get bad breath. I've got that now because mine's well out of fucking control. My body is probably swarming with it because these are just everywhere. My dogs, every single pore on them is infected with these things. So these have hairs coming out of them constantly all day long, and all they do is travel up to their eyes to get back in to lay their eggs again. Now, I've been to 3 vets with these, and these people who are manipulating my internet and telling all my friends that I suffer from psychosis are going and interfering with these vets. This bloke's seeing things. He's not really. My dogs were looked at from 15 feet away by the vets. What does that tell you? They're either scared of them or they think I'm mad and crazy. Well, my last vet is they have expensive horses there. Now, I sent 3 samples into them. One of them was a tiny little beetle. Now, I've already worked out where this comes from. It comes from hooved creatures. Now, you tread on it thinking you're going to squash it. You don't. It's such a hard shell. It just burrows straight through your shoe and straight into your foot. Yes, you can feel it when it goes into your foot. It's like a sting. And it only happens while it's going through and into you. Once it's in you, you don't feel it. You do not feel it. You just get bits of itches. Well, all they do is multiply, and when they come out here, at the back of your head or back of your hands. The first lot came out of the backs of my hands because that's where they were first in me. Now, the first time I did it, I didn't video it because I was in awe of it. You know, I had about, God knows how many coming out of about 20 to 30 holes, and they did one after the other, one after the other. Now, this happened up in Grant. The day I got sectioned, this happened in the hospital up Grantham A&E. Now, these were coming out, dropping all over the floor. All they're going to do is look for a new host. Now, at the time, I didn't realise, I just thought from the garden, well, I've got horses living out the front of me, 20 foot from my fucking house. So now I know exactly where them ones have come from, and there's 3 different sizes of them. They could all be the same, all different species, I don't know. I haven't worked that out, I'm not really bothered. They're not the things that bloody scare me, because they stay in your feet and your hands. Not like the other ones that go and live in your brain, the spirochetes. A bit like staphylococcus, because that goes and lives in your brain as well. Now, everyone knows that staphylococcus causes meningitis. Well, so does this thing. So I'm just wondering how many meningitis ones have been this and not staphylococcus. You know, because this one has been wiped. Yes, it exists, it's there, but the adult version of it, its final stage, is not there. And they've done that deliberately to hide all these other diseases that this one thing causes. Almost every disease known to mankind. I'm not making this up. If you want to Google it, it is out there. I've got a thumb here. Now, they've been doing this ever since I got, yeah, look at the thumbnail. Look. That's because that's too thick for me to bite. I'm waiting for these plier clippers to come, and I will cut them off, so you will see me with short nails one day. But they're still a bit off this week. Oh, look, that one twitching up. And if I can show you, yeah, they're a bit dirty. That's because I'm always scratching. But that could be beetles under there, because that's where they come out, under your fingernails. You can feel them when you're eating your fingernails, but it's not these beetles, it's the spirochetes down getting that keratin so they can form that last stage of life. Because that's what hair's made of, keratin and something else. And that's what these are made of, keratin and something else. How come these lot haven't put that together? These are top-notch, educated people, are they not? Well, how come it took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 months to work this out? And I just don't see how these lot, because they're deliberately keeping it from you. Because these things cause dementia, Alzheimer's, you know, these are diseases where you want to retire, and you're not, you're suffering from these, where you have to go back to them for the medication. Now, these get kickbacks for all that medication. Now, the more they prescribe to you, as in giving you more of it, the more cash incentive they get. So if they're giving you a bigger dose, they're going to get a bigger cash incentive. That's how they work. Trust me, you can Google it. I have. But I can't Google much these days because it's all being manipulated. All stuff's being put in front of me at the minute. And I don't know if it's true or not, so I'm a bit reluctant to Google stuff. I think I've said enough for now. I can't think of anything else I want to say. My dogs, yeah. Right, one of them he's 10 next month, and he's slept on a lap every day for 8 years. And when he got this infection a few weeks later, now he's over there at the minute, but a lot of the time he goes out by the back door because he's seeing things. He's seeing flies that aren't really there because they're in his head and in his eyes. I see things travelling from my eyes, and they're always going from down upwards, always travelling upwards. And they look like a spring, a flashing spring. That's all I can describe it. But it's obvious, it looks massive in your eyes, but they're not, they're tiny. But if you've got something in your eye, I've had one of these spirochetes going on. I only had one that I saw. Now this was this, watching it dance around in your eye. It must be as it's trying to wiggle and get down past. I don't know. There's nothing about them because they've wiped it from history. Done a good job of doing it, but they didn't go back far enough. Because I managed to find one back in the 1700s. That's how I identified these things. That's how I got the name Spirochete. And then when I looked at it, I thought, and the more diseases I was looking into, these are responsible for it. Ebola. Ebola is one of these attached to a virus. Pardon me, I can't remember what sort. Yeah, a lot of flatulence. But then here's a good one. A few years ago, our government told people to destroy Japanese knotweed and invasive plants. Yeah, we have invasive plants, but what they neglected to tell you is Japanese knotweed kills this bacteria. It will keep it out of your garden. That's why they want it ripped out of your garden. Nothing else. It's a herbal remedy. And it kills these things. So why would they want you to kill it? I Googled it to find it the other day, and the first thing that come up was this gun to impregnate it with poison to kill it. But there's other plants and species, invasive species they tell you to kill. Now if you look, they all have medical properties. Most of them against these things. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? Just like they tell you to do worm farming and telling you it's safe when it's not. Every worm drops its own bacteria off because worms have no teeth and no stomach. So they can't have stomach bacteria. Their bacteria lives in the soil. They drop it off all day long from the band around the outside of them. Now, some scientists back in 2017 discovered that one of my worms drops off E. coli. Now, the E. coli manufactures its own penicillin. Now, I was a bit shocked to find that out. That's how I knew that some of mine could be penicillin resistant. But then I found out that E. coli is one of the most social bacteria out there. And once it had penicillin from these idiots, it put its extra appendages out so it can communicate to other bacteria and other species. Yes, this can communicate to other species as well and steal their traits, as in flying, egg laying, you know, them sort of traits. Camouflage, chameleon, change your colour all over your body. Yes, some of these can do that. I've seen it. And that's the Staphylococcus aureus I've seen do that. I haven't seen any of the others, but I've definitely seen that one do it. That's because these, when they get to their final stages of life, you can see them with your eyes. Trust me, don't believe what these say. You can see them with your eyes. Or if you have a strong enough magnification lens, you can actually see them and tell what shape they are. Well, I've been doing nothing but this, but to be labelled mad or with psychosis, I really don't. Everyone thinks I suffer from psychosis. It don't really matter whether I suffer from Morgellons or not, does it? I know I have fibres. I haven't seen the fibres under my skin like you lot have, but I have fibres coming out of my skin every 30 to 40 days. And they're spirochetes in their final stage of life. But now they're coming out and they're dead. They seem to be coming out, and not all of them. Some are still alive. And I'm just wondering if this is them coming out, staying under your skin and just going through that stage but dying under your skin. So you've just got thousands of dead spirochetes under your skin. Now, the reason you don't know about these is because the history, it's been wiped. They have taken it out of history. I can't find out when. I knew it was somewhere after 1742 to 1916, I think, just before the First World War. Somewhere in that time that these all got together. Mr. Alzheimer's, Mr. Hodgkinson and Mr. Parkinson, these ones, because all these were looking into the same disease, and gave them a new name. Why would you do that? If not to confuse people who don't understand diseases, maybe. I don't know. That was just off the top of my head. I just do apologise. But yeah, I've got my daughter used to go shopping for me every week. She's now working, but she just don't hear from her. They all think I'm suffering from psychosis and mad, which I understand. You know, when you have educated doctors telling you that, people are going to believe. People have been believing doctors for years, have we not? Believing them that their medication is going to help them cure you. Well, it ain't. None of their medication cures you. All it does is give you extra side effects, so you have to go back to them and get steroids for your bloody side effects. making more money. This is just a money-making scam, and it is the world's longest-running scam. I just haven't been able to get down to the root of it or the cause of it. But all these doctors, all the vets, are all in on it. Otherwise, why were the doctors, as soon as you mention the word spirochete, laid with psychosis, well, you've got a test tube full of these parasites? And they even said, oh, we haven't got a lab to test them. Well, I know no hospital has a test to lab it, except for Children's Hospital to test blood on site. I think that's enough for me now. I think that's enough whinge. But yeah, I hope this helps people in some way.